Hi friends, today we are going to discuss about the nerve physiology. For this purpose, first we have to know something about the neurons and what are the neurons. And everybody knows that the neurons are the type of the cells which are present in central nervous system and also in the peripheral side of the body. And the main function of this neuron is to conduction. It conduct a message or impulse from one part of body to the another part of body. So it's a mechanism of coordination and communication network in the body. So how they work, we will discuss here. As we know that suppose we have a tank and this tank is filled of water. When we generate waves over here by touching the water surface, the wave starts moving like this, propagate in a forward direction, and here the energy which we give to the water, it's move forward. But the matter does not move, the water itself doesn't move. Like this, here, whenever we touch a neuron or whenever a neuron is get an impulse or the stimulus, it generate action potential, and this action potential move along the length of the neuron. For example, suppose this is the ending of a neuron. And we have in our muscles a lot of neurons, nerve endings. They act as a sensory receptors. In our skin there are the pain receptors. In our skin there are the touch receptors, pressure receptors. These are the ending of the neurons. They sense whenever they touch or whenever they feel temperature changes. Suppose I made here a neuron, and this neuron is touch sensitive to touch. So whenever I touch a neuron, the mechanical gates here present, they automatically open, and whenever these gates open up, the concentration difference of the ions present outside and inside, they starts to move inside and outside. For example, we know that the concentration of the sodium ions is more outside because the sodium is extracellular ion. For example, these are the sodium ions. These are the sodium ions present outside the cell. Outside the cell. Suppose I made here, these are the channels and gates. Some of them are mechanically stimulated and some of them are electrically stimulated. For example, whenever I touch here the ends of the neuron, the specific gates which are sensitive to the touch, they will start open up. Suppose this is the gate which is mechanically stimulated, so this gate will open up. Just like this, the other gates, these gates also work, and we know that the potassium is inside greater. The concentration of potassium is greater inside. So these are the potassiums inside. Whenever we touch the neuron, mechanically stimulated gates open up, and these neurons which are outside greater, they move to inside. Little sodium inside and potassium outside. This sodium starts moving inside. These are the mechanically stimulated gates of sodium. Sodium concentration is not much enough to generate the action potential. So whenever a small mechanical force is given to this neuron, small amount of mechanical gates open up and small amount of sodium starts to move inside. But here, as I mentioned, minus 90 is the resting membrane potential. At this level, the membrane is negative inside. And positive outside. This is the outside membrane of the sodium. The neuron. Outside membrane. And this is the resting membrane potential. At rest, when there is no stimulus given to the neuron, the membrane is positively outside and negatively inside. This negative concentration is also due to the less amount of the positive ions inside and the presence of the proteins which having the negatively charged phosphate group and other negatively charged ions. Because of all those ions, the inside of the neuron is negatively charged. So this is 9 minus 70 is the resting membrane potential. After giving mechanical stimulus to the neuron, few sodium gates mechanically activated. They are open up and few amount of sodium rushes inside. But here the neuron which was at rest little bit goes toward the threshold, and if this mechanical force or the stimulus is not large enough to generate the threshold potential, it will die off, it will end over. Whenever the stimulus is little bit stronger enough to generate the threshold potential, this potential will move toward the threshold potential, and this movement is because of the strong potential or the strong stimulus which is given mechanically. So more and more sodium moves inside. Whenever more and more sodium moves inside, this graph starts to move toward the threshold. Suppose it reached to the threshold. Whenever it reaches to the threshold, these gates, which are the sodium gates but they are electrically stimulated, they are sensitive to the electrical potential, specific electrical potential, they will open up. So these are the voltage gates, sodium channels. Whenever this voltage gate sodium channels open up, more and more sodium rushes inside. All these sodiums comes inside. And what happens? Due to the entry of the large amount of sodium inside, this area will change its polarity. In the beginning it was positive outside and negative inside. Now it changed to positive inside and negative outside. Why this is so? This is because the ions, the more and more sodium ions, due to their concentration gradient, they move inside. Whenever this move inside, the membrane starts to depolarize and reach to the higher potential, and it starts to depolarizing, rapidly depolarize to plus 60, plus 30. But here, why it is stopped here plus 30? Why it doesn't move to plus 65? plus 65 is an equilibrium potential of sodium. Suppose this is the membrane and this is the intracellular extracellular space. Suppose there are two sodium outside and 3 sodiums inside. So suppose here the potential difference is plus 20. That potential difference between the two membrane outside and inside. Whenever what happened at this membrane, suppose there are 4 sodium inside and 2 sodium outside, so the potential difference is plus 20. Whenever this gets stimulus or the channels open up, 1 sodium come outside, and here it became 3 sodium inside and 3 sodium outside, and here the potential changes to plus 30 or suppose plus 10 or whatever it is. So this membrane is called equilibrium potential of sodium, because at this specific potential the concentration of the sodium inside and outside is equal. So this potential is what we called as equilibrium potential. So suppose here we know that the equilibrium position of the sodium is plus 65. So whenever these gates open up, sodium, more and more sodium rushes inside, and it's want to touch its equilibrium position. So this is the gate. So whenever this gate is open up, more and more sodium inside, and it's depolarized and want to touch plus 65 potential. But here specific structures are present over these gates here. These are the structures which doesn't allow the sodium to reach to plus 65 potential. Here what happen, whenever the potential is reached to plus minus 57, which is the threshold potential, these gates starts opening and these gates starts closing. So what happened, it will open up and it will get closed. So before and this process, when it was closed, it was here and it was then reached to here and then reached to here and then reached to here and finally here, like this, because in the initial point it was here and it reached to here, then reached to here and then reached to here. In the duration, when this gate opening up like this, it was initially in this position, it will start to open like this. This duration, this is the time in which the sodium move inside. Whenever the enough sodium is move inside that it reach to the potential of plus 30, the gates again close up. So because of this, the potential, that is the depolarization, never reached to plus 65, which is the equilibrium position of sodium ions. Whenever this reach to plus 65 plus 30, the voltage potassium gates, they will start to open up, and these are the potassium gates which are present also on the membrane. They will open up and the sodium, the potassiums starts to moving outside. So more and more sodium, because they are more inside, so by diffusion or through the membrane, they will move outside to the lower concentration. So the sodium concentration, the potassium concentration is less, become less inside in sodium, less outside. So more and more potassium comes out. Due to this outcoming of the potassiums, the membrane again start to repolarizing. So here it goes down to the negative side. Here, and it reaches to resting membrane potential. Whenever it reaches to resting membrane potential, the membrane what causes the membrane again negatively charged inside and positive outside. So it's a little fluctuation of charges. So whenever it again reaches to plus 75, the membrane starts to hyperpolarizing. It goes to minus 85. It reaches to here. Why it goes here? I have an answer of this, that the potassium which is more inside, it come out when these potassium voltage gates are open up, and enough potassium is come out, and the membrane starts to repolarizing and reach to minus 70 milliwatt. And after this, the leaky sodium channels open up, and these sodiums are always leaky membrane potential membrane channels which allow the sodium to leak outside. So more and more sodium leak outside. So due to this, the potential of the sodium reached to minus 85, and this minus 85 is the sodium equilibrium position. This is the voltage which is minus 85 milliwatt is equilibrium potential of the potassium, and this equilibrium position is provided by the leaky channels. And after this, after it reaches to 85, there are the pumps which is present here on the membrane. They again shifted this hyperpolarized membrane to resting membrane. Here, suppose these are the channels, pumps, sodium potassium pumps. What will they do? They will actively take potassium inside and sodium outside. 3 sodium outside and 2 potassium inside. So by using ATP, so because of this pump, sodium potassium pump, the membrane again reaches to its resting membrane potential here. So this is all about the conduction system, in which the sodium channels first and mechanically stimulated sodium channels open up, and it starts moving toward the threshold. Whenever it reaches to the threshold, the voltage gated sodium channels open up and much amount of the sodium rushes inside, and because of this the membrane start to depolarizing and reaches to plus 30. And after this, the potassium voltage gates open up and it again starts to repolarize and reaches to the resting membrane potential, where it does not stop and goes to the hyperpolarizing state to reach its equilibrium potential. After reaching its equilibrium potential, the sodium potassium pump starts working, and it's regenerate the resting membrane potential. So here is depolarization graph. Depolarization and repolarization. This one what we called hyperpolarization. Hyperpolarization.